Hey, if you are breaking rapport anywhere in your content on sales calls, you are breaking your bank account. Today, we're going to talk about why and where it's happening. Sales Ascender, how's it going? Chris here. We're back for another Spotlight series. We have a great fellow Sales Ascender, and our community is fire. There's so much talent. There's so many great business owners, professional marketers, and sales professionals, and they're on the front line bringing all the good answers and results and responses to us here in this conversation today. And we're talking about a very important conversation, how to monetize your podcast specifically. And this really goes throughout all content, managing rapport throughout our content, throughout our marketing processes, throughout our sales processes. Keep this all in your mind because this is the topic we're going through today. We want high connection and high rapport throughout the whole process, which is why we're bringing on our expert, Abigail, to have a conversation with us today. Abigail, how's it going?
Great. So happy to be here and to talk about the rapport and the commercials and things that podcasts are doing right and perhaps a little bit wrong.
I'm really excited to have this conversation, to look at where it's falling apart, what's working really well for all of us to kind of dive into. Let's jump right into it. Let's start with maybe like the top two things, like don't do's. The things like, hey, if you just stay away from these one or two things immediately, you will see an increase in rapport with your audience. What would you say to that?
I think the first one is something I've touched on before, which is, when you're listening to a podcast episode and all of a sudden you're really into the story, you're really into the content, you're really into learning whatever it is that person's providing. And then all of a sudden in the middle, commercial just pops right on in. You're like, whoa, wait a second, what just happened? Because I was really involved and now I'm being already,
Which reminds me, today's episode is actually sponsored by Krispy Kreme. So kind of like that? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, I think that is very spot on.
Now everyone's hungry. If you just have a commercial pop up in the wrong time or the wrong way, or it's a donut ad for a sales conversation, it's kind of off is what you're saying, I think. So staying away from that. What else would you say that we can immediately not do or change that will give us kind of an immediate increase in rapport?
So I would also say consider your audience and consider all of the types of audience members you have. So if you're doing like a spirituality podcast, maybe it's not the smartest to come up and do a sales ad of some sort. So it's really taking into mind who's watching you and who's actually going to need what you're advertising or who's sponsoring you, whatever it is. There's a lot of methods and we'll get into those a little bit later, but just really taking into consideration who it is and what they actually want from you.
Got it. Okay. Something that's gone through my head when creating content is considering who's in the room. For example, in our conversation today, calling out who I'm talking to, but sometimes I'll picture and pretend like you and I are talking, here, but maybe they're sitting like on the side of me or behind the laptop. So it's really not just me by myself in a room talking to a laptop. It's us having a conversation, but picturing myself kind of in a room with who I'm talking to. Is that maybe like a kind of the idea or the best practice of, if you say something in the room and it feels weird, probably is not what you should put in your content?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's so smart of you to imagine the conversation happening in real time together in the same space instead of just looking at, what do they call us? Bobbling heads, or what is that word?
I don't know, but we can try it.
We can do that. But yeah, so it's really connecting with that person as if they are there, even if you are the only person talking to the computer. It's just very important to make that connection and also review like interviews you've done, review podcast episodes you've done, see what you've said that might be off. And it's not a bad thing. Like, it's not bad to say off things. It's actually amazing because it helps you get better. It helps you improve. You're like, oh, I could reword this. Oh, I could reframe this. Oh, I can, elevate this.
I like that glass half full perspective on that. So just not having that fear. Go into your content, say what you want to say. But that's kind of like the tip of the day so far. Re-watch or read your content. Re-watch it. See how, experience your own content and complete it, walk away from it, and come back and experience it in a similar way that someone else would be experiencing. I really like that. Now, as you've said that, I'm like, I don't really ever do that. I probably should do that. So I love that tip. I appreciate it. That being said, let's kind of move into some more best practices. Let's shift into what are the great things that we can do. Top 3 things that we can do to increase rapport. I know a lot of the projects you're working on, the people people and communities that you're building. You're very good at this. And so I know you're in the front lines getting those great answers. I would love to hear them. Please share them with us.
Yeah, it's super easy. I just ask people
For you.
what they need. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true for me. I just ask people what they need. Like, what are you interested in learning about? What do you need right now? What are you struggling with right now? Where are you needing support? And this is in any topic. I mean, we're not just business, but also, any kind of coaching or anything that you have going on. Just ask your audience. It's really that simple. You can use polls, you can use emails, you can use all kinds of ways to interact and do that. Sometimes I like to put up crazy posts just to see what the reactions are. So a few weeks ago, I put up a post saying, hey, commercials are not the way you need to be making money with your podcast. There's so many other ways. And that post blew up. People are like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And that's the thing. It's like, sometimes be bold and say things that are going to stir the pot a little bit, but maybe stir the pot in a positive way. It's not saying that commercials are out all the way. It's just, how are we using them? How are we doing it? And what are the better ways?
When I think about it, commercials are the worst.
Shavings? No! Savings!
You can't skip this Geico ad because it's already over. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Sorry. Okay. I'll probably be the last one. I just had. Commercials, polarizing content is what I heard you say, and challenging people. Hey, what do you think on this? You get kind of a reaction, but it's evoking emotion around an important topic of where do you stand on this? It brings awareness to what you're actually doing. It's a helpful post. So I like that. And just because I like that example, is there one more example of something that you shared? Because I have people listening, hey, what's the thing that people are most afraid of, or it's the number one problem you keep hearing when you're talking to your market? What I'm getting from Abigail's, that's roughly the type of post you would make, but I want everyone to kind of sit in the space for a second, because I would love it if anyone listening, watching this right now, takes action on exactly what you just said. They're like, oh, I know exactly what she means. I'm going to go do a post. So while we kind of hang in the space a little bit longer, is there another recent post or maybe one you made? Okay, you already came to mind.
Yeah. I haven't made it yet, but I'm going to, and I cannot wait to see the reaction. This one is going to basically say we are all children in adult bodies.
Yes.
Because come on, we really are. I mean, unless you've done some really deep healing, we're all just grown-up children. And that's something that it needs to be addressed, because once you realize that, you're like, man, I'm eating a lot of ice cream and pizza lately. What is going on? That's your inner child saying, hello, I need something. I need the attention. I need something that I'm not getting, and I'm going to get it through these devices or things that, give it to me. And so, it's very interesting.
I look at my 4 and my 3-year-old, and not as much my 7-month-old yet, but my 4 and 3-year-old, and they'll just they're being kids and fighting or being crazy or whatever and complaining about something melting down. I'm like, oh man, that's how I feel sometimes. I'm like, I'm still we're all just a bunch of kids. This is ridiculous. So totally agree. That's where you took me with that comment. It's so true. Thank you for sharing a couple of those different examples so that we can go make those posts and kind of see where people are at and what the responses are with that. So let's bring these ideas into the context of a couple different content arenas. Let's start with podcasts. For podcasts, I really want to beat up, should we do commercials or should we not? Because what I want to, and I'll start giving examples as we get into this conversation, examples of people who do. And I'm going to give, and they're the big names, they're the whatever, and there's some big names that don't. So I'm legitimately interested in this conversation. I think everyone that's doing content should be business owners and sales marketing professionals. If you're not, you're losing. It's like you're missing out on authority and money and all the things that we're working so hard for. Share your knowledge with the world. I'm off my soapbox. Abigail, it's back to you. Let's start with why it's not a good idea to put commercials.
Yeah, well, I guess the bottom line for me is I just see there are so many other valuable ways to make and generate income, no matter what arena you're in. But we'll stick with podcasts for right now. Okay. You could do sponsorship. Someone could sponsor you. That doesn't mean you have to put a 30-second commercial in the middle of your program. You can do something at the end, like JP Spears. He nails it. I don't know if you've seen any of
I
his
have.
videos,
I
but
have.
he's pretty incredible. But the way that he approaches it is brilliant because he has obviously looked at his audience. He knows what they want. He knows who's following him. He knows what they're seeking and the lifestyle that those people are either living or desiring to live. The other ways that you
Yeah.
can monetize and make money is partnerships, affiliates. There's all kinds of different ways that don't have to interrupt the rapport or the vibe of the video or whatever it is that you're implementing and creating.
So, okay, so let's go into challenge mode a little bit. I'm thinking of Ben Shapiro. My wife is. Are you familiar with Ben?
I'm so
Oh,
bad with names, but if I saw his
it's okay.
face, I'd be like, that guy.
It's good old Jewish Ben. Let's see if I get in here. Let me for everyone watching. I want to take you on this journey, okay? And I guess I'm going to be shouting out his podcast here. I just Googled. No, that's not the right. Yeah, I Googled his name. Here's Ben Shapiro. He's a conservative American commentator. He has like the Daily Wire and a podcast and a video podcast. He's been around for a while. He does ads, and when I think of him, he's somebody that does like a bigger ad, but the way he does ads, I'm like, like, okay, I'll put up with it, but it just doesn't quite. He's not funny or as like charismatic as JP Spears, and so I feel like yeah, go ahead and speak to this.
Yeah, so I'm thinking he doesn't have to be because his audience isn't the same audience. His audience is going to respond differently to that material. And also, if
Yeah.
he's been doing this a while, his audience understands that this is just part of what he's doing. You know, there's a big difference between people who've been in that arena building these audiences who are like, there's a phrase for it and it's slipping my mind right now, but where it's you strategically build your audience of people who respond to that kind of advertisement. They respond to being advertised to. Whereas there's
Yeah.
other people like me where I hear a commercial and I mute it. I don't care. I don't want to hear it.
Got it.
Yeah,
You just
so.
shut him off. Okay.
Mhm.
I love it. And this is kind of loading slow, but I was going to like pull up an episode and find like a part here. But actually this brings up a great point. Let's talk about Joe Rogan for a second. I mean, that dude, let's talk about his podcast. Like, for crying out loud, it's 2+ hours. And there's not any product placements in there. Where do you, I mean, I don't know if you know his particular, but maybe you know others that are like that have, longer form content, and they're not doing ads on their, the dude's, he sold to Spotify for $100 million. This was last year, right? He's monetizing. The dude's making money. But he's not doing, like you're saying, he's not doing ads or commercials within his content. Where else do you think are podcast hosts typically making their money?
I think a lot are doing like list building. So, hey, subscribe to my list or my mailing list or my email or get notified about this. And then that's when they slip in things that can generate their income, whether that's, again, partnerships, affiliates, sponsorships, things like that. You can still send that same information, but you're sending it in a different way, one that's not breaking up the flow of the show. And I think perhaps that's what he's doing. There's also, think about it also like this. So, radio and TV commercial zone, right? I mean, every freaking 2 minutes there's a commercial on both of those. But that's what they've been doing. Like that's what they've programmed their listeners to hear and be part of and experience. So those ads will sometimes work on those people. And it's also about the repetition of ads. Just like when you're learning anything, how many times until you finally say, okay, well, maybe I'll go try that. Okay, maybe I'll go learn this course. But you have to hear it maybe, I don't know, what is it? They say like, it's almost like when you're doing sales with people, you have to have certain conversations over and over and over until a person's like, oh, okay, finally, I got this. Let's do it.
It's like, oh, now I get it. Yeah.
Mhm.
The repetitive. And hey, Ash, thanks for hanging out with us today. She's saying, hey, but ads, like I hung through both of your ads today just to hear the content. Thank you, Ash, for doing that. And she actually likes Ben Shapiro's ads and how he does it. He is quick about it. I'll give him that for sure. And yeah, no, without killing the vibe. That's a great job. Yeah. So thank you guys. Thank you for commenting, Ash. And this is fun to kind of go through commercial, non-commercial, where does this fit within our content? I mean, in blog format, which we can go to in a second, of where that's going to be placed, but staying focused on podcasts. Hopefully everyone listening, watching to this, if you're not doing this, I'm going to bring up a really big topic in just a second with podcasts, is doing your own ads essentially within your own podcast. The main thing that I hear is manage the vibe or manage the experience and rapport. And so we went through a couple of examples like JP Spears where they do it well and it makes sense for their audience. And it's like, oh my gosh, thanks for mentioning it. And there are examples where I'm like, oh, well, if they like it, then I'm like, dang it, it does work.
It does, because you're the right audience for that.
Yeah, so it totally makes sense. And then, going through ways of where it's breaking rapport. Let's talk about it not being somebody else's product or idea, but this idea of we're doing content, we're doing our own episode, and we stop and we say, today's episode is, sponsored by my book, which this is clearly Brendan Burchard, but anyway, some other book, right? My book. And it's like, did your book sponsored your podcast? Like, but some people will, now I'm kind of making light of it here, but there's, I think some people that do their own ads and they do it in a great way. And it's like, oh, I didn't even know you had that program. Thank you for mentioning it, kind of thing. Well, please speak to that. What's your rule of thumb there?
Yeah, I think I don't have anything against that. I don't have anything against commercials, period. But again, it just goes back to the presentation value of it. Is your book related to the actual content that you're speaking to on that particular episode? Is that course related to something that you're sharing to help people?
Got it. Okay. So it comes back to serving, it comes back to helping, it comes back to just treating other people the way you want to be treated. And it's funny how that solves so many problems.
I really think it does. World peace next.
Let's go. Mic drop.
But I mean, like, think about it this way. Where do advertising companies actually make their money? Like, genuinely make their money? Any ideas? Or you want me to just blurt them out?
I mean, I do have some ideas. Advertising companies, I'm thinking of all the different places you can a lot of thoughts went through my head, versus digital, non-digital, and they're selling space. They're selling that real estate essentially to small to mid-sized businesses, enterprise business. Anyway, that's what was going through my head, but I would love to hear what's going through your head.
Yeah. So another way to look at it also is they are making money on the people who are wanting to share the commercials, because you pay for that. You're paying for the airspace, you're paying for the airtime. But then they're also hijacking the other side of the equation where they're asking people, well, you want to spend $5.99 a month on Spotify or Pandora, whatever it is, to not listen to ads? I think that's where they're making a bucket of money. A bucket.
Yeah, well, I mean, are you kind of like hinting at like a virality, like, share? Yeah, I mean, because you're not paying for that essentially. It's just entertaining or interesting or funny, and hence Super Bowl commercials kind of situation a little bit. And that's totally right. That's where you really get a winner. It's awesome. It's kind of like finding that one JV deal or referral partner that's like, oh my God, I get it and I love it and everyone should know about this. Like, I found an evangelist, and you start to get some leverage. Totally makes sense. So I think we get the overall arching principle. I think everyone listening to this would agree with you on that. What else would you say in terms of, let's move to some different spaces. Let's move to we could go to blogs. I promise we'd go to blogs. So how do you approach content and keeping things on point, the vibe right within blogs?
So I feel like blogs are a whole nother arena, simply because at this point, there's so many like browser extensions and things like that where we can put them on to block advertisements. So say you're doing advertisements on like the side of your blog, right? And most people aren't even going to see them. I know this is going to just sound like repetitive, but it goes back to like making those real connections with people. Like, stop relying on ads to do your job for you.
Yeah.
People are going to find a way to not, I mute ads, right? That's the same thing as putting up an ad blocker. People don't want to hear it. Some people do. I love hearing JPs. They're hilarious. But that's because he does them right. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference. Like, if I know that I'm being advertised to and it's not fun and it doesn't make me laugh, or excite me, I don't want to be part of it. So I guess all like also your presentation and how you're advertising.
So, man, so many thoughts are going through my head. I'm like, oh, so what I heard is I just have to be entertaining and funny, and then I can start putting ads on our Spotlight series. No, Chris, it's not. No, if you do it right, it's a different experience. It's one of those. It's just it's one of those things. Like it's not bad or wrong, but if you don't nail it, then you're probably creating a lot more collateral damage than you are good. Oh, but I've got this. Is how everyone's buying. But for every person you bought, you've like pissed off, and you have 15 more people that hate you, and they're kind of spreading that, and so it's kind of like this negative effect. But here's what I'd love to do. Let's bring it a little bit closer to home. How do you do it?
I don't do any advertisements. I do interviews, I do JVs, I do affiliates, I go to networking events. That's how I pull people in.
Got it.
Almost every person I've worked with is either a referral or someone I've met at an event. It's just your approach and do what works for you. This might not work for everybody. Not everyone is
Sure.
going to be able to pull people that way. It just depends. So if commercials really do work for you, do it. Keep doing it. Double down on it. It just
Yeah.
depends. And you have to just really ask yourself, like, does this resonate with me? Is this how I want my audience to interact with me? Is this what I want them to be subjected to?
Yeah. I love it. Some big takeaways from today is, one is, what is your style? It all works. It all works. And so, what method do you enjoy doing? I think that's such a simple thought, but I know that I can admit to completely overlooking it because I've tried all of them. I started out in local chamber of commerce and BNI and local networking groups, and you look people in the eye and you make the connections. And really, honestly, I feel like I have a huge advantage because I started there.
Mm.
Because I know it always comes down to just talking to people.
Yeah.
Which really isn't fighting. It's more like talking to people and, working together. It's probably better. I don't know, charade of as an example. But that all said, that can work. Like you're saying, ads can work. Content, podcasts or blogs, they all work. But it comes down to treating other people the way you want to be treated. Exercise the form that you enjoy doing, because you'll probably end up doing that one consistently in a fun, energetic way that makes people feel it's visceral. It's like, hey, you made me laugh, you made me cry, like I felt something when I did this. Ash, thank you, Ash. She loves the imagery. Please follow me because they like pictures. Yes. Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you were making fun of my charades, my shenanigan charades. But you're saying I love imagery. So yeah, so maybe Instagram is Ash. Like, it sounds like where you're hanging out the most. People follow me because they like my pictures, and so that's where that totally makes sense. Which is cool. We have all those different styles. Cool. I think that's a really big
entrepreneur
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I know an entrepreneur who, the way he does advertisements is he makes promotional posts on his Facebook account for other entrepreneurs. But these are like hands-on first experience, like he goes through everything. So again, it's connecting with that feeling and that approach of really, who are you talking to and how are you going to make this not salesy, but educational, informational, and maybe empowering, depending on what it is that you're discussing,
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I'm really loving this conversation. This is, I hope another thing people are feeling and taking away here is it's okay to go evangelize your product or service. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, you should probably stop immediately and evaluate why you feel that way. And within the next 30 to 60 minutes, resolve it and get to a place where you're like, oh, this feels good and I'm actually excited about it. And you consider that other side of how it's being received. So it's not this like, oh, I'm so excited, it's going to be out. You're like, I don't know how to handle you right now. You understand the whole process. This is really helpful, Abigail, for people leaning in and really enjoying this conversation, liking the idea of keeping high rapport. Where's the best place for them to reach out and find you?
Facebook, Abigail Sinclaire with an E at the end.
with an E. I like it. Yes. So please reach out we're here on Facebook and all kinds of places. Please reach out to Abigail on Facebook, and she's a master at rapport and has very solid communities. Do you mind mentioning your community today?
Yeah, sure. So the main community I think you're referring to is my PR community. So basically, I have a directory where people can come and sign up and be part of that community itself. They can find interviews, they can find hosts. I'm getting ready to expand where you can actually find affiliates, partnerships, courses, things like that as well. So lots of things getting ready to be unraveled for everybody.
So if you like word of mouth on steroids and strategic partnering and conversations, referrals, Abigail is definitely a great direction for you, and has built a great community around that. So thank you for sharing that, Abigail. Hey, before we wrap up for today,
Yeah.
I always like to ask people, being an entrepreneur, creating product or service, really creating music, creating films, creating in general. It's a really vulnerable place. It's a really challenging place. And so I'm always fascinated and curious at people that like myself and like you that jump into it. And my simple question is why? Why do you choose to, create these spaces for people and provide a product and service?
There's no other way. My reality, I knew that I needed to create my own freedom. And in order to create my freedom, I feel like I have to help others either create their freedom or learn how to create their freedom. So if that's helping them get interviews to get their business off the ground so that they can leave whatever corporate America, whatever lifestyle that they have, so they can embrace where they really want to be, that's what empowers me to do this for others. It is about me, but at the end of the day, it's about everybody. We're all connected. We're all doing this together. We're all supporting each other. And that's what I want to be able to do. That's the legacy I want to leave. I want to let people know that you can have any reality that you want. You just have to step up and create it. And I want to help give them the tools and resources to do so.
So powerful, Abigail. Hey, speaking of resources, Rochelle was asking, hey, sorry, what was the name of the community PR again?
Yeah. Oh, I don't even think I said it. So Human Network Connection. You can
Yes.
go to humannetworkconnection.com. I also have a Facebook group where you can type in that and it will also pop up.
We're back to watching me talk and type again. Network connection.
I'll drop some links too after this. So
yeah, thanks for doing that in the comments. That'd be great. If Hannah hasn't already done it, both would be fantastic. Human Network Connection. Did I spell all that right?
You did.
Yes.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. All right. So Human Network Connection. Yes, I know there's some other great networkers here and our sales centers community. We're making connections daily, weekly, which is why I love talking to Abigail so much, because we love. Hey, like. Entrepreneurship can be lonely, but it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be. So please reach out to Abigail and continue to connect. So, hey, Abigail, thank you so much for spending some time here with us today and all of your fellow sales ascenders. And we look forward to having you back out at some point again, too. That'd be great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me and, allowing me to speak my piece on this. And I just hope it allows people to just rethink what they're doing and just make sure that you're resonating with yourself and your approach, whatever that approach is. Be like JP, do commercials at the end. Be like someone else, do them in the middle. I don't care, but do it in a way that it resonates with you, because that's what's going to bring you the clients. That's what's going to bring you the money. That's the end of the story, basically.
That's so powerful. My big takeaway is I was like, oh, shoot, which one am I? And so now I want to kind of categorize them and then be like, oh, that one seems like fun. And then I'm going to find more people that do that and kind of accelerate in that direction. So I appreciate that framework today, Abigail. And hey, Sales Center, thank you for watching. We'll be back next week for another Spotlight series talking with all of you who are talented, amazing people on the front line, sharing all the great stuff here on the Spotlight series. You guys have a great week and weekend. Take care.